Appendix 2, Sue-Anne's Open Letter. To get an idea of what Sue-Anne is really like, I have included in this book a statement that she allowed me to make on her behalf. This was posted into the public on 2011 September 18th, so it's more than 2 years old now, and that post has had 1,500 views to date. So a lot of women have seen Sue-Anne's words. I also translated it into a voice recording, and that too was viewed many times before my YouTube account was shut down. So this is a statement that was made on 2011-09-18. Okay? Starting now. Her guidance to me on this statement was as follows. Peter, you know me, you know what I think, you know how I feel about you and what you are doing. I cannot speak English like you can, so you can put on your site what you know, I think, and know I feel. You can quote me on that. If what I have to say helps save fathers' lives, if it helps boys like my son be with their father, say what you know I would say. You will not say anything that I would disagree with. I trust you in this. So the following are the words that Sue-Anne would be quite happy to put into the public if she had my writing skills. These are her opinions, not mine. They're my words, but they're her opinions, and we have discussed them at length. That they line up with mine in many ways is because she's one of the most wonderful women I have ever met. The question I would put to you, dear reader or listener, is this. Why don't Western women say things like this? Sue-Anne is in no way biologically different to Western women, but she is very different in the way she thinks, speaks, and acts. Why can't Western women be more like Sue-Anne? And if you were more like Sue-Anne, men would be lining up to marry you in the West. Background. This is her speaking now. Firstly, I am fully aware that there are those who would wish to do me harm in order to get at Peter. He made me aware of this a long time ago, but circumstances have arisen where I now choose to speak out on his behalf. For those who have not read Peter's posts about me, here is a little about me. I was born in the Ukraine and also have citizenship of an EU country. My father died when I was younger and I miss him terribly. I know what a good father is like for a girl, and I know the problems and emotional trauma that it causes a girl to lose her father. That so many girls lose their father to divorce and not natural causes like death, as in my case, I see as a tragedy. Good fathers are very valuable to girls as well as boys. There is not a day go by when I do not think of my father. I am a single mother as well. I did not choose so well with my husband when I was a young woman. That did not work out. For this mistake of my youth, I have had to labour quite hard to provide for my son and my mother over the years. There is no such welfare in the East as there is in the West. I am a devoutly Christian woman. I believe in God. I have experienced His blessings many times in my life. I am also an aunt to my brother's child. I'm a very family-oriented woman. As a little girl growing up, it was one of my greatest dreams to have a family of my own and raise my own children with a loving husband. I too am a girl who grew up wanting the blessings of children and grandchildren when I was older. It did not turn out as well as I had hoped for me, but I trust that God has His plan for me. I am waiting to see what He has in store for me next. As you will read, both Peter and I believe we were brought together at just the right time for me to support him. I am thankful God gave me the opportunity to be one of the people to support this man when he really needed it. In my case is very common where I come from. It would be easy for me to feel sorry for myself, but many other women are in the same situation as me from my homeland. We make the best of what we have. We say our blessings and thank God that we do not live in worse times. Many of the older men I knew as a child fought in World War II, and many of the older women told me of what life was like in those times. I count myself lucky not to have been tested as they were. My relationship with Peter. For those who do not know, and it's in the previous chapter anyway, if you didn't read it, I first met Peter in November 2007, so he tells me. It was a normal meeting for me. A man I did not know simply walked up to me and told me I was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. I get that or similar quite a bit. Men are always approaching me. I guess one day this will end and I will be the sadder for it. We talked for a few minutes, I guess. The thing that struck me was that he was not actually interested in anything more than telling me I was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He told me that he was just going through a divorce after 23 years with his wife, and that for his next wife he would look for a woman of his own background. This almost never happens to me. Men, as the saying goes, are interested in one thing, and I meet a lot of such men because of my looks. So the memory of him stuck in my mind a little. We met again in March 2008, so Peter tells me. We laughed over our first meeting and asked each other what news we had. He told me that he had started a relationship with a woman in Australia that looked very promising, and that he had spent some time together to see how that would work out. He reported that all went very well for a while, but then she started to act very much like his ex-wife, and he felt that there were unresolved issues for her. He was in the middle of thinking about taking a step back and talking with her about taking a step back. He told me it was all very confusing to him that another woman who did not know his wife and did not grow up in the same town could be acting so much like her so early in the relationship. He openly wondered what that was all about. I remember it clearly. He then said something that caught my ear. He said a friend of his had suggested he might date a Russian woman, as there were lots of them in Germany and the reports of them were very good. In our first meeting, he was clear that he was not interested in any woman outside his own background, but his friend had put the idea in his head that maybe Russian women were worth talking to. So I told him Ukrainian women are even better than Russian women. We had a lovely chat and agreed that we should catch up again soon just to talk things over and get to know each other better. Our next few meetings were quite courteous and interesting. He talked about the issues he was having with this woman that he was very interested in. He talked about how it seemed that there was something very amiss about Western women now, that he had met another woman who seemed perfect on the face of it, but had some of the same issues as his wife, was really playing on his mind at the time. This turned out to be the programming of feminism into Western society that Peter did not come to understand until later, and told me about later. So I took my opportunity to present myself as someone who might be interested in a man like him. We talked and learned more about each other during this time. Peter tells me that for this I am labelled as an Eastern Euro whore who is only interested in his passport and his money. This shows the hypocrisy of Western women. I am an EU citizen with my own EU passport. Indeed, Peter would have the benefit of not dealing with the Irish citizenship application should we have married. And whore? Really? Women have always tried to find husbands who can provide for them and support a family. Just try and tell me this is not true all over the world. In the West, Peter tells me, women proclaim loudly how independent they are of men, but they like to take alimony and child support. In the East, alimony and child support are almost never paid as the men have no money to pay them with. So we work to support ourselves and our children if we are unlucky enough to choose our husbands poorly. For this, Western women call us Eastern women whores. It is no wonder Peter calls them such hypocrites. In April 2008, Peter changed. He was not the happy, self-assured man I met. He became quite quiet. He did not talk much. He would simply listen to what I would say. Much of our time together was spent in silence this month. I remember it well. It was clear something was very, very wrong, but I didn't know what. I knew better than to ask. Clearly he would tell me when he felt the time was right, so I decided to just be his friend in this time and see what happened next. He always seemed very happy to see me, but he was very, very quiet, which was clearly not his usual way. Because of its significance in hindsight, I recall we went to a May Day party on the 1st of May 2008. We were eating dinner together. I totally forgot this incident until some 18 months later when Peter reminded me of it. I managed to knock my bread off my plate and onto the table. I picked it up and told Peter that back home, if a bread roll fell to the ground and was not spoiled to eat, we would thank God for the bread roll, as many did not even have that to eat. He told me 18 months later that he had been suicidal all April and that my innocent comment was the first time that that month he had a future thought. and his thought was that he would really like a woman who was so simple and humble to be part of his life one day. I had no idea he was suicidal. None at all. He just seemed quiet and introspective for a bit. I assumed it was issues with the divorce. It was a month or so later he informed me that what he had done in April was to go through the process of disowning his children. I was very, very sad for him when he told me he had done that. Peter was obviously a very loving and caring father. He reminded me of my own father in some ways. That he felt there was no other option to go forward than disowning his children, I saw as a tragedy for him and for his children. I spoke very strongly against his wife for using the children as weapons. I know how abusive this is of children. My girlfriends were also very supportive of Peter in this time. When I told them about his story, they all supported him and denounced his wife. Apparently Western women support women such as Jennifer. Us Eastern women know full well just how vindictive women can be towards men. We do not support such cruel and vindictive women. We certainly do not support a woman who would use her own children as a weapon against their father to gain more money than is rightfully hers. The stories Peter has told me of what goes on in the West are terrible. He tells me this happens to millions of men. How men tolerate this is beyond me. They certainly would not tolerate such behaviour where I come from, and they don't have to, because us women would not allow a woman to do the same. We protect our men from evil women. I have a brother. If he had a wife like Jennifer in divorce, I would speak out for my brother the same way I am speaking out for Peter. I would do it because it is what God would want me to do, to speak out for what is right. It is for this very reason I have chosen now to give Peter the right to put my thoughts into his writing. Peter and I became quite friendly during May to August 2008. It was clear he was going through a difficult period. I was determined to be his friend through it. He seemed different to most men I meet. I wanted to get to know him better. I recall once telling him, "You could make a woman very happy." And his response was, "Yes, I know. And what would this woman do for me?" I was saddened by what seemed to me that he was getting it. I was saddened by what seemed to me that he was getting a tougher skin than he had seemed to have before. He seemed to be becoming a harder man. From September 2008 to May 2009, Peter was away working. We corresponded a bit, but it seemed like that was the end of any possible future. We just went about our lives. He seemed to be very busy and very preoccupied. When he was more free after May 2009, he told me that what he was planning to do. He was now planning to take on the governments of Australia and Ireland over the crimes that were being committed in the family courts. I, for one, felt this was not a good idea. Taking on governments is a dangerous thing to do, no matter how right you are. But now he seemed a very different man to the one I met. He occurred to me as much more determined. It was only later that I realised that he is a very determined man, and that this was now simply coming to the surface to be seen by me. He told me of his plans to go to Australia in November 2009 and take on the courts by standing in them and defying the magistrate. Just before we went to dinner, and he told me he had something very important to tell me. It was at this dinner he finally confessed to me that he had actually been suicidal in April 2008 when he was disowning his former children, and that is why he was so quiet. He also told me that I was one of only 3 people whom he had leaned on to get him through that period. He thanked me for being the woman that I was to him during that time. I was shocked, as I had done what I thought any decent Christian woman would have done for him. I was shocked when he told me that all his so-called women friends had hated on him and blamed him for his wife's crimes and child abuse. He told me that the reason he felt he must tell me all this now was that he feared for his life and his freedom for what he was about to do. He told me that he felt he might not ever be coming back, and that he wanted me to know just exactly how he felt about me and what I had done for him. I was very, very touched. I too was fearful for his life. I know full well many men who defy their government are killed. I realised why he'd been not so keen to move along in our relationship. He was fearful that he would be jailed or killed, and that would hurt me. There are not so many men like that. That he had taken that position only convinced me more that he was no ordinary man. I suggested to Peter that having survived being suicidal, that he might want to not get himself killed by his own government. But his position was clear. He told me he could not live with the thought of those children in Australia being betrayed by their government and not do his best about it. I admired his courage and his willingness to risk his life and his well-being to do this. I was starting to think that this is the sort of man I would like to have defend me and any future children we might have. Peter is obviously a man who will go to any length to protect those less able to protect themselves. His trip to Australia to collect the video evidence of crimes in the courts is clear proof of his character. He tells me people watching his video make up lies and criticise him. I find this amazing. And now we'll just have a short word from one of our sponsors. And welcome back from that short message. When Peter returned for Christmas 2009, I was thrilled. He told me that he knew his life was no longer in danger, that he had collected the evidence he needed, and it was only a matter of time now that the Australian people started to wake up to the fact that the entire government was a criminal organisation in Australia. The evidence was now widely spread around and could not be contained by merely killing him. He seemed very happy, like a man who had a weight removed from his shoulders, and in many ways he was. Through 2010, Peter and I had discussions about what might be possible in the future. We had joked about things before, but now it seemed to me that he was a man that was truly worth making an effort for. I didn't know any other men like him. I didn't know any other men like him. I still don't. The issue came down to children. I wish more children, and he does not. I had hoped to change his mind. We agreed to go our separate ways in October 2010. We remained friendly, and we see each other occasionally. This is what I know of Peter for those who are wondering about how I know him. I hope this is useful background for what I'm about to say. My opinion on those around Peter. Peter has demonstrated to me these last 4 years that he is an honest man who will do what he says he will do. I am shocked and amazed at what he has told me happens to men in the West. No one ever told me this before. I am shocked and amazed that when his children were kidnapped, when his bank accounts were frozen, when he was reduced to begging for money of family and friends, that no one spoke out on his behalf. Not his father, not his brothers, not his best man, not his best mates, not his sons, no one. It is no wonder to me, looking back, that he was so silent in the month he was suicidal. It must have been a terrible shock to him that those whom he believed loved him and cared about him proved false, even those who were closest to him. If the same happened to my brother, everyone would be speaking out about it and denouncing the evil woman for the evil woman she was. Us Eastern European women wish to protect the good husbands because we do not have so many of them. It seems that Western women wish to destroy men's willingness to be good husbands. They might want to come to the Ukraine to find out what that looks like. In the end, it looks like a lot of women trying to raise children on their own with the help of their mother. That is what it looks like. There is a reason so many women from my homeland work in Europe, and we leave our children with our mothers and send money home to support them. It is because our men are not so willing to work hard and provide for a wife and children anymore. Peter pointed out to me that communism was to blame for this state of affairs. So where I come from, we do not judge people by whether they are a man or a woman. We judge them by their words and deeds, their actions. A bad woman is denounced just as quickly as a bad man. It is shocking and amazing to me that 95% of the assets Peter managed to accumulate over 25 years of working, despite paying for a family of 6 for much of that period and being the sole income earner for that time, were taken from him in what is a clear crime. It is even more shocking and amazing that he tells me most people are quite happy for this to have happened and will not denounce it as the crime it clearly is. Again, not his father, not his brothers, not his uncles, not his best man, not his best mates, not his male cousins, not his former children who grew up in the house and saw how hard he worked for them. No one. I cannot understand why all these men stay silent. What is wrong with these men? Words fail me that those people who have, for his whole life, encouraged him to be the best father and husband he could be, allowed him to be criminally abused by an evil woman and stood by silent. When we discuss these topics, what I see in his eyes is a disappointment in those he put his faith in. Peter tells me that online people call him angry or bitter. He is neither. If he is anything, he is sorely disappointed and rightly disgusted in those who remain silent in the face of crimes against so many millions of men. He is disgusted that men do not care about each other at all. I can barely believe the stories he tells me of what happens to other men. It seems inconceivable to me this can be happening in the West. It also amazes me that he has made public his efforts to stop these crimes happening to other men of less means and less ability to defend themselves, and these other men whom he has made such efforts to help also tell lies about him and criticize him. From what he says to me, men in the West are entirely dysfunctional. They seem to have no concept of justice, of doing the right thing. They seem to have no concept of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do none of you men in the West believe in God? Do none of you know right from wrong? Do none of you know there is great evil in the world and that good Christian people must stand up against that evil? What is wrong with you men in the West? Having known Peter for these past 3.5 years quite well, it is no wonder that he no longer wishes to live in the West, where so many men are so badly treated. I would not wish my brother to live in a place where his children, his house, his money and his future income can be stolen by an evil woman using criminal courts. He is better off in the Ukraine than in Ireland and Australia, it would seem. Lastly, Peter told me about his decision not to attend his mother's funeral. I support his decision 100%. When Peter told me that his mother-in-law and father-in-law agreed that they would not allow his elderly and ill mother even a phone number to call her granddaughter on, this was one of the times in my life I was truly furious at how vile, cruel and evil women can be. All us women know that when men are bad men, they are pretty open about it. It is not that hard to tell when a man is a bad man. But when women are vile, cruel and evil, all us women know that such women will wrap that up in sweetness, and the women will act like victims if their duplicity is revealed. To hear that Peter's elderly and ill mother was denied even telephone contact with her beloved granddaughter was an act of vileness, cruelty and evil that is beyond words. I was so sad for him when he told me he sat watching his elderly and ill mother crying over this. To hear that his father would allow this vile and evil woman to tend to his ill mother, I was as outraged as Peter was. At first I could not believe his father would do this. His father raised a fine son, so I simply could not believe he would allow a woman who abused his wife to tend to her at a later date. This is just not right. I thought there must be some misunderstanding, but Peter assured me that he got those words directly from his father's mouth. There could be no question of misunderstanding. So when Peter told me that it was his understanding that this vile, evil woman would be invited to his mother's funeral and that all and sundry would allow his mother to be dishonoured by burying her among those who abused her and the children and committed crimes against him, I supported his decision not to stand there and allow his mother to be dishonoured by being buried in the presence of a family who had openly allowed her to be abused. On the sad event that my mother passes away, my brother and I would never allow someone to be present who had abused her. Never. I am at a loss to understand what is wrong with people in the West, that a family that has produced a man who is so obviously of fine character as Peter would allow its women to be abused and then bury them in the presence of their abusers. I really would like someone to post to Peter's site and explain to me why that would be so. I can assure all readers that where I come from, people care about their women. They don't let people who abuse old women get away with it. We also care about our men. We don't treat them so carefully as we do our women, but we certainly do not allow crimes to be committed by women against men and stay silent about it. In summary, I am shocked and amazed that those who have known this man his whole life are staying silent as to his treatment. I am shocked and amazed they are not offering to do as I am, to make a statement in his support. I wish to point out just how sick and dysfunctional the people in a society must be to allow what happened to him to happen, and to denounce him for working to fix the issues for the benefit of all. And he tells me this is common. At first, when he told me people were calling him a woman hater, a wife beater, a pedophile, a crazy man, I thought he was just kidding. I thought it was a lead up to a joke. I then thought he must be just somehow mistaken. I then thought it must be just a few sick and disturbed people. Now I know that it is hundreds of people for years. Now I know that his government are even running websites slandering him. Now I know that he has asked thousands of women to speak out when these women know full well what is going on and they won't. I am as disgusted as Peter is as to those who claim to be good people in Australia and Ireland. Men and women alike. How can they stay silent in the face of all these crimes and all this slander is a mystery to me. I had thought that because I had known him only a relatively short time, that there would be lots of other people speaking out to denounce the lies and the liars around him. But he tells me in all of Australia, only one such woman has spoken out. It almost makes me ashamed to be a woman. But these women who do not speak out are obviously nothing like the same as the women where I come from. I am glad I am nothing like the women Peter is telling me about. I think it is a disgrace that one man can do so much to help others as a result of being a victim of clear crimes of a vile, disgusting and evil woman and an evil legal system, and is then further criminally slandered by those very people he has put in so much effort to help. Peter and I have gone our separate ways over the issue of children, but he is the kind of man I would wish to be the father of my children. Brave, courageous, honest, hard-working, loving, caring, and always putting others before his own personal needs. It seems you men and women in the West have no idea of the value of good fathers. Fathers like my father. Fathers like Peter so obviously was. Shame on all those who have known this man for a long time, who have not spoken out in his support, and who have not denounced Jennifer for the cruel, evil, vile woman she is. No wonder Peter is so disappointed in his so-called family and friends from his pre-divorce life. It is my hope that in speaking out in support of Peter, that I will help him be successful in his project to reintroduce the rule of law into Australia, that it will help stop the estimated 4,000 suicides of men per year, that it will help so many other girls and boys like my brother and I not lose their father so early in their lives. I remind all readers, I am a woman and my brother is a man who lost our father at an age that was far too young for him. It had a devastating impact on our lives. I know firsthand the trauma that the loss of a father causes. It is a lie to say removing the father from the family via divorce or death does not affect the children. It does. That you people in the West allow this trauma to be visited on your children on the mere whim of women is beyond belief. That you hate on a man who is trying to stop this is also beyond belief. If my words here save the life of one father and spare the trauma of one little girl and one little boy, I will be very pleased indeed. Peter tells me my words of support have the potential to save many, many more lives than that. I'm honoured he has given me the opportunity to do what I can to save as many lives as I can and to save as many children as I can from the trauma of losing their fathers. Now, you Western women, you can call me an Eastern Euro whore all you like. It just shows me how much better than you, my countrywomen, and I are. So that was a statement that she allowed me to make, and I'm very pleased that she allowed me to make that statement. So thank you very much for listening.